The cathedral is dark and ominous, a foreboding presence in the night. A lone figure approaches the cathedral. It's Reverend Mason, a middle-aged priest. Reverend Mason enters. The boy, Samuel, is lying near the altar, his body contorted and twisted in unnatural ways.
Stay away from me, priest. You have no right to be here.
The demon inside Samuel speaks in a low, guttural voice.
Your holy water is useless against my power.
The demon begins to writhe and twist, the boy's body convulsing. Suddenly, snake-like hisses and macabre breathing came from a shaped darkness to Reverend Mason's left. The sounds dragged the priest's gaze to it. He could make out two large wings flapping and a whipping tail striking outwards.
You cannot defeat us, priest, for I am too strong for you.
Reverend Mason begins to recite a prayer in Latin.
Hello and welcome to our podcast, discussing all things books. In this episode, we are going to explore The Ring in the Glass. Horror novels come and go, but what makes a story truly terrifying is when it taps into our deepest spiritual fears. Today, we're exploring a book that took 5 years to write and dares to ask, what happens when religious faith meets supernatural evil?
Let me tell you, this one really got under my skin. The way it centers around a painting of the temptation of Christ, affecting this young boy Samuel. It's unlike anything I've read before.
What's fascinating is how author Nathan Tulane built this entire narrative from his childhood memory of seeing that painting in East London. The story grew into this massive 120,000-word exploration of good versus evil, featuring everything from pharmaceutical executives to Egyptian exorcists.
Speaking of characters, the way he handled Reverend Stephen Mason really stands out. Instead of your typical all-knowing priest character, we get this deeply flawed man struggling with his own faith while trying to save a possessed child.
That's exactly what makes it so compelling. And you know what's really interesting? Tulane spent 6 months just outlining the plot before spending 4.5 years writing and revising. That's some serious dedication to getting the psychological horror elements just right.
Well, that certainly shows in the final product. The way he weaves together all these different perspectives, the workaholic mother, the flirty assistant, the alcoholic handyman. It creates this rich tapestry of human weakness that the demon Belphegor exploits.
Oh, let's talk about that demon for a moment. The name Belphegor itself comes from ancient mythology, often associated with the sin of sloth and intellectual pride. Tulane really did his homework on the religious elements, though he mentioned wondering if he might have overdone it.
That's what I found so engaging, though, the way he balanced modern skepticism with ancient faith. You've got doctors and psychiatrists trying to treat Samuel's possession with medicine, while this Egyptian exorcist Mahmoud is pulling out ancient demon-fighting tools.
And speaking of Mahmoud, what a brilliant addition to what could have been a very Western-centric story. By including this character who lives in a Sahara cave, Tulane suggests that the battle between good and evil transcends any single religious tradition.
You know what really struck me? The way he developed these characters during those 4 years of writing. He mentioned how inspiration would strike at random moments like while watching TV.
That's right. He'd have to rush to his bedroom to scribble down notes whenever an idea hit. It really shows how creating something this complex isn't just about sitting at a desk waiting for inspiration. The story evolved organically as he explored these themes of human nature.
So what do you think about the underlying message, that humanity can be both incredibly creative and loving, but also capable of absolute destruction?
Well, that duality is what makes the horror so effective. We see it played out through characters like Alan Wilson, the insane witchcraft scientist who helps unleash the demon. He represents that dark potential within human nature, while characters like Mason represent our capacity for redemption, even in the face of doubt.
The audiobook version must bring a whole new dimension to these characters. Imagine hearing the possession scenes brought to life through voice acting.
You know, that's an interesting point about the audio format. Susan Marlowe's narration apparently adds this whole new layer of psychological tension, especially during the exorcism scenes. It's one thing to read about a demon possession, but hearing those voices, that's a different kind of terror entirely.
That's exactly why this story works on so many levels. It's not just about supernatural scares, it's about the very human fears we all face.
And that's really the genius of what Tulane has created here. Whether you're approaching it as a horror fan, a religious scholar, or someone interested in psychological thrillers, The Ring in the Glass offers something profound to contemplate about the nature of faith, evil, and redemption in our modern world.
Just maybe keep the lights on while you're reading it, and avoid any religious paintings for a while afterward.
Visions about the temptation of Christ. A boy drawn to the occult. Evil forces then enter his mother's home. Nobody expected what would happen next. Her son only played the Ouija board for kicks.
You cannot defeat us, priest.
Now a horrifying demon has been unleashed. Time is running out for an Anglican priest. To banish the demon and save the boy's soul. The Ring in the Glass. One priest's faith, one boy's survival.